The dry ping from the phone made my heart stop. The screen lit up. New photo from St. Augustine's school app. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. Nora, 6 years old, was hugging Marcus tightly after play practice. Beneath the photo, the teacher's caption, "Nora and her dad after rehearsal." Such a sweet moment. One photo, one innocent line of text, and 6 years of living two separate lives shattered like glass on a tile floor. I knew my mother, Madeline, had also received the notification. She was still on the emergency contact list. For the past 6 years, I had tried to bury that secret. One tap on a screen, and everything collapsed. My father was gone. My mother had frozen our home into a museum. For 6 years, I had been forced to maintain a fake apartment to breathe a little freedom. The phone vibrated again. It was Mom. I let it ring, once, twice, 3 times. Each ring was like the strike of a gavel, marking the rhythm of a sentence about to be pronounced. The call stopped. A new notification appeared immediately. Voicemail, 1 new message. My hand trembled as I pressed play. My mother's voice came through, cold, enunciating every word. Rachel. I received a photo. I see a man. I am coming over tonight. No discussion. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering dryly on the floor. Marcus walked out of the kitchen, his shirt dusted with flour, Nora trotting behind him, holding up a paper mask. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked. I looked at my husband, at my daughter, at Nora's clear eyes, at Marcus's hands still smelling of dough, and I understood. My mother knew. And this time, I had nowhere left to hide. I tidied the fake apartment like an actor preparing for a performance I didn't want to be in. The beige tablecloth, the crystal glasses placed at precise intervals, the bookshelf organized by height. Everything in this apartment was constructed solely to keep my mother calm. Every time she visited, I opened the door with a stiff smile, letting her see a perfect Rachel still living the life she desired. Single, neat, respectable, but it was just a stage. My real life was a 15-minute drive away. A small house in Bywater where the floorboards creaked, where Marcus left his instruments scattered in the living room, where Nora hung her dinosaur drawings all over the walls. That was where I could breathe. It all started after my father died. He was a judge, the only person in the family strong enough to soften my mother's obsessive need for control. She turned the house into a mausoleum when he was gone. The curtains were never changed. The dining table was always set for 8, and the family portrait was polished under glass like a museum artifact. I was 29 then, and had just met Marcus. He was a music teacher, always smiling, his eyes sparkling whenever he held his trumpet. I loved the freedom in him, and it was that very quality that drove my mother mad. "Music doesn't feed anyone," she'd said, eyes scanning him as if he were a stain. I remember arguing back, a rare occurrence in my life. Music feeds the soul. That sentence silenced her for a week before she switched to another tactic. Constant phone calls, emails, and even showing up at Marcus's school to interrogate him. I knew that if I let my mother see my real life, a family she disapproved of, she would shatter it, just as she had with my first love. In college, I had fallen for a classmate. My mother called him every night, sowing doubts about his ambition until he finally believed he would never be reasonable enough for me. He left, leaving me with the lesson that love could not win against my mother's obsessive control. So, when Nora was born, I decided to not let my mother take this happiness away. I set up the fake apartment. I lied. I split my life into 2. For 6 years, I lived like an actor in an endless play, changing masks whenever the doorbell of that apartment rang. The one thing I hadn't anticipated was technology, a school app, an old contact list I hadn't deleted. And now Madeline knew. I looked around my real home in Bywater. The afternoon light streamed through the window, illuminating the tattered sheet music Marcus had left on the piano. On the wall, Nora had taped a drawing of our family, a mother in a lawyer's robe, a father playing a trumpet, and a little girl with curly hair. The drawing was clumsy but warmer than any portrait in my mother's house. Marcus brought out a tray of baked cookies, looking at me with concern. "A text from her?" I nodded. "She said she's coming, tonight." Nora overheard, and her eyes lit up. "Grandma's coming?" "I'll show her my dinosaur drawings." I froze. How could I explain to a 6-year-old that her grandmother wasn't like other grandmothers? This woman measured love by the straightness of curtains, the prestige of a school, and social status. Outside, the Mississippi River wind carried the water's thick, damp smell. I took a deep breath, then let it out. For 6 years I had been running, but tonight there would be a knock on the door, and for the first time, I would have to open it. The St. Augustine schoolyard was crowded with parents picking up their children after play practice. The sound of children's voices buzzed like a broken beehive, mixed with the faint notes of a piano still echoing from the auditorium. I held Nora's hand as we walked out, trying to hide the tremor in my breath. My heart was still being squeezed by my mother's cold voicemail. A glossy black Mercedes stood out like an ink blot in a parking lot full of old sedans. The car door swung open. The sound of high heels clicked on the pavement, sharp, precise, and steady as the beat of a metronome. My mother emerged. She wore a gray plaid suit, a handkerchief folded into a perfect triangle in her breast pocket. Her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun without a single stray strand. Her face was wrinkle-free, eyes scanning the crowd like a scalpel before landing on me. No greeting, smile, or outstretched arms for the grandchild she hadn't seen in 6 years. She held her phone straight out. The screen was lit up with the photo of Nora hugging Marcus, the teacher's innocent caption beneath. Nora and her dad, after rehearsal. Such a sweet moment. Explain. I was frozen. Marcus stopped in his tracks. Nora, not yet understanding, looked up, her eyes bright with innocent curiosity. "Mommy, is this Grandma? I've never met her before." Her words were clear as a bell. But to me, they were a knife, tearing open the wall of secrets I had built for 6 years. A few nearby parents turned to look, their whispers and curious glances closing in around us. Madeline looked down, her eyes scanning Marcus from head to toe. Her gaze lingered on his dusty leather shoes. Her voice was sharp and cold. "Dirty shoes. How can a man who doesn't know how to polish his own shoes maintain a proper family?" Marcus squeezed my hand, trying to swallow his anger. His shoulders were as tense as a guitar string. My mother's gaze shifted to me, sweeping from my hair, which I'd left down, to the wrinkles on my blouse. "You didn't tie your hair back. You look sloppy. Your character is revealed in the smallest details." I took a breath, trying to stay calm. "Mom, this isn't the time to—" "On the contrary," she cut in, her lips curling into a counterfeit smile. I recognized that smile, the social mask she often wore at charity galas. A few parents nearby glanced over, not understanding what was happening. Madeline immediately raised her voice, making it sweet but dripping with command. "My granddaughter deserves a prestigious future. A boarding school in Boston, for example." Beneath the velvet of her words, I recognized the familiar blade. The surrounding eyes, surprised, envious, a few nodding in agreement, all unwittingly turned me into someone with something to hide. Someone who should be ashamed for not meeting the standard she had set. Nora looked up at me, her eyes clear, her voice eager. "Mommy, is Grandma coming to our house to play?" I froze. For 6 years, I devised every possible refusal and excuse to avoid this, but my daughter had never asked me so directly, right in front of her grandmother and so many people. Madeline didn't miss her chance. She tilted her head, her sharp blue eyes cutting into me like a scalpel. "Yes, Rachel. May I come over?" The question hung in the air, light in tone but heavy as a verdict. There was no more social smile, no more distance, just a command disguised as a caring inquiry. I stood stunned, my hand trembling in Marcus's. Nora waited for my answer, her eager eyes showing no hint of doubt. Marcus looked at me, his eyes pleading with me not to. Let this storm swallow our small family whole. And my mother, the woman who had turned her entire life into a museum of discipline, was demanding entry into my real home. My hands were still shaking as I drove home. Nora chattered from the back seat about her play rehearsal, while Marcus sat silently beside me, his gaze fixed on the window. I couldn't remember the green lights or the red, only the frantic drumming of my heart. Is Grandma coming, Mommy? Will she sit in the front row to watch me perform? Nora asked, her voice full of excitement. I swallowed, my throat dry. Marcus turned to look at me, waiting for an answer. I just pressed my lips together, unable to speak. The air in the car felt as heavy as lead. When we got to our house in Bywater, Nora ran straight to her room, hugging a pile of dolls and colored paper. Her small singing voice drifted out from the half-closed door, but I stood frozen in the living room. Marcus removed his coat, placed it on a chair, and turned to me. How long were you planning to hide, Rachel? His voice wasn't angry. It was just so sad and heartbreaking. I covered my face and sank onto the sofa. I don't know. I was just so afraid she would destroy everything, like she did before. The words came out between sobs. My mind flashed back to college. My first love, shattered by my mother's incessant calls and veiled words that planted seeds of doubt. He had left, leaving me standing alone. I had sworn I would never let that happen to Marcus. I stood up, entered the bedroom, and pulled a wooden box from under the bed. It was old. The paint on the lid was scratched, and the lock was rusted. I opened it. Inside was my father's trumpet mouthpiece and faded handwritten letters. I tremblingly opened one. His handwriting was slanted and strong. Rachel, your mother can't distinguish between love and perfection. She wants everything to fit into a mold, including you. I worry that one day you will forget that life isn't meant to be arranged, but to be lived. Tears fell onto the paper. I read on, each line a fire in my soul. Live like music. Not every note will be in the right place, but the whole piece is what makes it beautiful. Don't let anyone else write your melody. I burst into tears, a mix of pain and relief. Memories flooded back. The nights my father taught me to listen to jazz, pointing to the parts he played wrong and laughing. One wrong note doesn't matter, as long as you keep the rhythm of your heart. I looked in the mirror. The face that stared back was tired, my hair a mess, my eyes red. I whispered, Mom turned my whole life into a fake apartment. But I won't let Nora grow up with two versions of herself like I did. Marcus came in and sat down beside me. He took my hand, his eyes gentle but firm. We're not hiding anymore. You're not alone. He picked up the trumpet mouthpiece and placed it in my hand. This is your music. No one has the right to write it for you. I clutched it, the metal cool and familiar. Nora ran out of her room just then, holding up a new drawing. It was clumsy, but the image was clear. 3 people standing under a spotlight, holding hands. Above them, the light shone brightly. This is our family performing on stage, Mommy. Nora cheered. I pulled her into my arms, tears streaming down my face. I whispered, If you want the light, I won't let anyone block it. Marcus sat down beside me, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. The 3 of us hugged under the dim yellow light of the living room. Nearby, the wooden box was still open, my father's letter gleaming in the light, the trumpet mouthpiece reflecting it like a small flame. I looked up at Marcus. My voice was hoarse but steady. If she wants a stage, we'll give her one. But not hers, ours. Marcus nodded. I saw his eyes light up, no longer afraid. That night, I sat alone in the living room after Nora was asleep. I spread out my father's letter, placing the mouthpiece and Nora's drawing beside it. Before me, 3 generations seemed to merge. My father's legacy of freedom, my daughter's desire for the light, and me, standing in the middle, forced to choose. No more running, No more fake apartment. This time I would step onto the real stage. The St. Augustine Auditorium was packed. Children chattered as they adjusted their costumes. Parents whispered, and cameras clicked. I sat in the second row, my heart pounding. Marcus gently squeezed my hand, his eyes silently asking, "Are you ready?" I gave a slight nod, though a storm was raging inside me. Nora was backstage with her friends, dressed in a brilliant satin princess gown with a constant smile. She was happy, and I swore I wouldn't let anyone, not even Madeline, take that joy away. The microphone crackled. The PTA MC introduced the sponsors. I held my breath. Madeline walked up from the back of the auditorium. She wore an ivory suit and sparkling heels, her gait like someone reviewing troops. Her shoes echoed, each click a tap against my temples. She took the microphone, her voice booming. "Ladies and gentlemen, St. Augustine deserves more resources. Tonight, I am pleased to announce the Madeline Fund, a grant to build a new playground and provide scholarships for outstanding students." In particular, her eyes swept down to where I was sitting. The entire auditorium turned to look. My heart seized. Nora, my granddaughter, will be the first recipient of this scholarship. The fund will guarantee her full tuition to attend the Whitfield Academy in Boston, and after that, Yale, the prestigious university her father once dreamed of. A round of applause erupted. Some parents whispered in admiration. Nora peeked out from the wings, her eyes shining. She did not fully understand the words, but was excited when Grandma said my name. In Madeline's hand was a small box wrapped in blue velvet. She opened it and took out a gleaming golden key tied with a silk ribbon. "This is a symbol of the future." The air felt frozen. I could hear my own heartbeat. A wave of anger washed over me, but so did fear. I would be seen as ungrateful in front of the entire room with a single refusal. Marcus whispered in my ear, "It's time, Rachel." I stood up. My legs were trembling, but my voice was unmistakable. "Thank you, Mom, but I have to say this." Everyone turned. The stage lights hit me, illuminating my face. I walked onto the stage and stood next to Madeline. Her smile remained icy, as if she believed I would thank her profusely and accept the fund. I took a deep breath, my voice shaking but firm. "This is a great gift, but Nora's future is not for anyone to predetermine. She will walk her own path, and my husband and I will be the ones to guide her, not some pre-selected academy." A murmur went through the crowd. Some parents stopped clapping. I heard someone whisper, "Is she really refusing?" Madeline tilted her head, her voice still sweet. "Darling, this isn't a refusal. It's an opportunity. You're just overwhelmed." I opened my bag and pulled out a folded stack of papers. My father's letters. I held them up. My father left instructions. This isn't just a memory, it's a legal reality. The trust fund he established for me is irrevocable. You cannot use finances to control me. Not ever. I unfolded a letter and read aloud. "Live like music. Not every note will be in the right place, but the whole piece is what makes it beautiful. Don't let anyone else write your melody." Whispers spread through the room. A few teachers nodded. A parent turned to the person next to them. "That gives me chills." Madeline kept her smile, but her hand was shaking. I saw it clearly. I placed the letter on the lectern and pulled the old trumpet mouthpiece from my pocket. The stage light caught the scratched metal, making it gleam. This was my father's. He taught me that one wrong note doesn't matter, as long as you keep the rhythm of your heart. Marcus stepped forward, took the mouthpiece, and blew a short jazz riff. The sound filled the auditorium, free, wild, alive. It cut through the heavy atmosphere like a knife through fabric. The children clapped in delight, and Nora jumped up and down behind the curtain. "That's my daddy." A teacher approached the microphone. "I've taught Nora for 3 years. She is creative, kind, and a good friend to everyone. That doesn't come from the pressure of prestige. It comes from the love in her home." A wave of supportive applause broke out. I saw Madeline's face tighten momentarily before she smoothed it over, trying to regain her composure. Just then, Nora rushed out and took her grandmother's hand. Her clear voice rang out, "Grandma, can you hear me play the beat? I can drum with my hands." She clapped her hands, pat, 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 trying to match the jazz rhythm. The whole auditorium laughed with delight. Madeline froze, her eyes faltering. Her calculations, discipline, and perfect squares, which she had arranged her entire life, were shattered by her small granddaughter's clumsy rhythm. I looked her straight in the eye and delivered the final blow. "Thank you for the key, Mom, but the door to my house doesn't need a key from anyone else. It's already open for those who truly know how to love." The applause rose like a wave. Some parents stood up. Nora ran to hug Marcus, then turned to hug me. I bent down and whispered into her hair, "The light is yours, Nora. No one gets to block it." Madeline stood there, the golden key in her hand, her lips pressed into a thin line. For the first time, I saw her lose control of the scene. It wasn't that I had won. I had finally drawn a boundary, and everyone had witnessed it. The auditorium buzzed with energy again. The children took the stage to perform their play. I sat down next to Marcus, my hands still shaking, but my heart felt lighter. The music, the laughter, the stage lights. It all blended into an imperfect melody, but it was mine. Night fell, and the auditorium slowly emptied. The last of the parents led their children home, their laughter echoing into the parking lot. I stood silently under the remaining fluorescent lights, holding Marcus's hand. Nora ran in circles with her friends, her princess dress flaring like butterfly wings. Madeline was still sitting in the front row, the golden key tucked into her coat pocket, her face looking weary. It was the first time I had seen my mother sit so still, not adjusting her scarf or checking her phone. She was like a stone statue that had just begun to crack. Nora ran up to her, holding an unfinished drawing of the stage. "Grandma, this is me, this is Mommy, and this is Daddy. You're here too, I drew you." She held out the wrinkled piece of paper. On it, under a yellow spotlight, Madeline was drawn in a purple dress, standing next to our family. The drawing was childish and clumsy, but it silenced the air. Madeline blinked. I saw her hand tremble slightly as she took the drawing. "You drew me here?" Her voice was hoarse, unfamiliar. "Yes, so you could be close and watch me perform. Will you come again next time?" Nora asked innocently. My mother faltered. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, as if the machinery in her head couldn't compute right, wrong, perfect. Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm. "You can come if you accept our family's way of life." I nodded. I looked my mother straight, not flinching for the first time. "I'm not maintaining 2 houses anymore. If you want to come in, you will see the real one, with all the mess, the clutter, and the love inside it." The tension was as tight as a violin string. Nora didn't understand, still chattering about her play rehearsal. My mother listened, her movements stiff, but then I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Not a social smile, but a rare moment of vulnerability. The stage lights went out, leaving only the darkness outside. Marcus wrapped his arm around my shoulder and whispered, "No matter what, we stood our ground." I squeezed his hand. My father's letter and trumpet mouthpiece lay still in my purse, like a quiet, steady heartbeat. Madeline stood up, her heels making their familiar clicking sound on the floor. But this time the rhythm was slower, uneven. She turned to look at me, her expression hard to read. "We still have more to talk about, but I saw a lot today." Then she turned and walked away, leaving a strange emptiness behind her. I bent down, picked up Nora, who was yawning widely, and pressed my cheek against her hair. A clear thought rose in my mind. The battle wasn't over. But from now on, I would no longer run. I would stand in the light, with my daughter and Marcus, no matter what darkness came our way. Through the glass doors, the moonlight shone on Nora's drawing, which had fallen onto a chair. 4 people standing together under a spotlight. Not perfect, not in a straight line, but it was my family. and I would protect it at any cost.